for reasons that have nothing to do with national security and really more with political retribution. But I'm not permitted to say how long I served my country. But I can say that I was younger than I am now. And when I came in, I was so excited because I thought I get to serve my country doing something that I think is really interesting. And I thought, oh, the government's going to pay me to live and work overseas. And when I started, as you might imagine, getting into the CIA is, you go through a lot of hoops to do that. I went through many interviews. I went through an extensive medical evaluation, psychological evaluation, a lot of multiple choice exams, of course a security background check, and all of that is a little bit of a blur to me, except to this day I still remember one of the questions on the multiple choice exam that I took, which was, do you like tall women? I don't know how to feel about it. So in any case, they decided whatever I answered, I don't recall, that they would let me in. And I was brought in, very quickly, there's 4 directorates in the CIA. There's the Directorate of Operations. That's where you do the core work of what the CIA is all about, which is to make sure that you're recruiting assets, foreign assets, and getting, hopefully, good, solid intelligence to senior U.S. policymakers. You have the Directorate of Intelligence, that's where the analysts are, and they are the ones that are collating all this information that comes in from around the world, corroborating it, and then releasing it out into the intelligence community in intelligence reports. There's the Directorate of Science and Technology. They do satellites. They're doing, everyone knows Q, of course, from the James Bond series. I never saw a shoe phone, but you get the idea. They do some pretty interesting things. And then there's the Directorate of Administration, and they're the ones who make sure that this truly worldwide operation, the logistics work. So I came into the Directorate of Operations. And when I came in, I think I can say this, I was one of the first females brought in specifically to go into operations. Because prior to that, the women that were in operations really had come up through the ranks. They had typically started in support roles as secretaries or safe housekeepers, or they were what's called reports officers. They're putting together the mumblings of what operations officers say when they're meeting with their assets. But to be actually recruited as a female to go into operations, that I was in those early classes to do that. So I was brought in there, and I started out with a class of about 50 people. They were what's called, the term has changed now, but they were called at the time career trainees. And you were expected to make a career at the CIA. And we went through our training at a place called The Farm, which is a location outside of Washington, D.C. And that's where I learned to do things like jump out of airplanes and fire a variety of automatic weapons. I did escape and evasion for weeks at a time in the woods. It's this whole, they create this whole alternate universe. And in many ways, it was, I thought, sort of camp for adults. I mean, it was very intense and very challenging, but I was, as I mentioned, younger than I am now, so I thought it was all very interesting. The whole idea behind that was not that you were going to be parachuted into Mother Russia. It was really that the idea, a couple reasons. One, they wanted a very intensive evaluation of who they just brought on. Even though they've just spent maybe the last 12 to 6 months already, even before you were given the offer of hire, looking at who you were, they wanted a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-by-minute evaluation of who was this person, and that who you were under very challenging conditions, when you're up to your chest in swamp water for 24 hours, or with sleep deprivation, all of those things, that does tell character. And so they would report back to headquarters, you know, we've got some good ones and some ones that we think will not, they'll wash out. The other reason for doing that intensive training at the farm was because these are the people, as I mentioned, the career trainee class that you come in with. You were expected to go through your career with these people so that when, say, you were in Hong Kong and you needed someone that you could count on in another part of the world, you could find them because you'd gone through this intensive bonding experience, probably very similar to what those Navy SEALs or Marines at Parris Island. You know who you can count on when the chips are down, or who really cannot be counted on, or who's going to complain, that sort of thing. So that was the reasoning behind it. After that training was completed, for folks like myself going specifically into operations, we stayed on at the farm and went through tradecraft training. This is where you learn how to be a spy, photography, how to write reports, and of course the most important thing, the entire recruitment cycle: spot, assess, develop, recruit. The whole idea is to bring people in that are able to provide senior U.S. policymakers with good intelligence, so hopefully they can make good decisions with that intelligence. So I was, very briefly, I touch on this, we'll talk on it more with questions, but I was working in what was called the Counterproliferation Division in this, what I talked to you about, the DO, the Directorate of Operations, in the run-up to the war with Iraq. My job, I was head of their operations. My job, along with my team, was to find out what was going on in Iraq in terms of their alleged and presumed WMD program. Because don't forget, we didn't have an embassy open. It hadn't been open since the first Gulf War, where my husband, we were not married at the time, but he was a charge d'affaires at the embassy in Baghdad. He had negotiated the release of hundreds of American hostages with Saddam Hussein. President George H.W. Bush called him a true American hero for his time there. And then in 1998, Saddam Hussein kicked out UN weapons inspectors. So what happened after 9/11, let me refresh your memory, everyone here in this room remembers exactly where you were on 9/11, but what happened very shortly after that, literally the smoke is still coming off the World Trade Towers, when I think one of your neighbors, Donald Rumsfeld, was it, I'm pretty sure he's not here this evening, but he was unfolding the maps at Camp David, talking about, well, Afghanistan, there's no targets there, but in Iraq, now, there we have something. And so there was this pivot to Iraq, and what do we have there? And we were continually, the drumbeat began from 9/12 until we went to war in March 2003. We were told that the nuclear threat was imminent. We were told we don't want to see the smoking gun in the shape of a mushroom cloud. Remember that? And that all led ultimately to Joe, after the war began, in July 2003, writing a 1,500-word op-ed for the New York Times, What I Did Not Find in Africa. And in it, it's his opinion, he spoke about a trip he had done for the CIA, but he said, you know, I think that this Bush administration has manipulated and cherry-picked the intelligence to nurture and provide more support, American public support, for the war in Iraq. And needless to say, the administration didn't take that very well.